Shalom Aleichem Rabbi. This is Yehuda Levin. The program is Levin at 11, heard each and every Thursday evening, Leil Shishi, from 11 to the midnight hour, which is an apt reflection of where we're holding Yiddishkeit. We're approaching the midnight hour. Things are very, very dark. However, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that is our adherence, our subscription and adherence to the Hashkafas of the Gedolei Torah of yesteryear. I'm your humble host, Yehuda Levin, with 98% of my brain tied behind the backs of President Trump, Agudas Yisrael of America, the OU, the Lakewood Rabbinate, and many, many other people, just to make Hashkafa 101 understandable to the masses. Where we float with the punches, like 50 or more years ago, the Bakshu Cassius Clay, who later became known as Muhammad Ali, his theme when he was fighting Sonny Liston was float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. I think that's an apt description. We float like a butterfly. We go with the punches. And we see hashkafa in everything that happens. In other words, I'm sitting here at my dining room table in front of my screen about to tape my radio program. And so suddenly, Rav Hagoyin Rav David Eidenson Shlita from Muncie calls me up on the phone. He says, there's a big problem with Mamzeris. I said, Rav Eidenson, maybe you'll come on and discuss the problem for 10, 15 minutes. We'll see, we'll hear. So Baruch Hashem, that's the way it goes. So we will start with that subject. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Eidenson.
Shalom Aleichem, what a great honor to be on your radio show. This is wonderful. Dr. Rabin with a very important message.
Thank you very much, Rev Eidenson. It's very interesting because there's a confluence of different factors this very day that are coming together, meaning you phoned me on this general issue. And it's very interesting because on my chats, which I invite people to join, the number for the WhatsApp chat is 718-469-6999. And we have several chats. There is a discussion that was precipitated by somebody who placed an ad for ORA, for the Organization to Resolve Agunot, on the chat. And it basically shows a young modern Orthodox man and woman. They're both smiling. And they say they did a good thing for everyone by signing a prenuptial agreement. And everyone should do the same thing. They should make marriages better by signing a prenuptial agreement. So, Rabbi Eidenson, before I allow you, or a request from you, I shouldn't say allow you, Chas v'shalom, but request from you a response, I would like to just inform you and the audience of what I had to say about this. I said as follows. The fact of the matter is that people who are in the know will tell you that as many as 85 to 95% of the people who find their way, who wend, W-E-N-D, wend their way to Bezdin to demand a get, are of the feminine gender. A very, very high number. And that has to do with the fact that there is a tremendous atmosphere of feminism in the world, that women have been put down, they have been the subject of misogyny, etc., etc. They have the equal rights, they're the same people, they're co-equals in every single way. And therefore, that has trickled down, obviously, to the Frum community. And therefore, there's a general feeling amongst women of dissatisfaction. This is the Zhulik I married. He's not wealthy enough. He's not handsome enough. He's not enough of a raconteur. He's not skilled enough. I don't like his father parenting skills, and financially, and on and on and on. And therefore, I heard, although I never, that there's a Chazon Ish. And the implications of the Chazon Ish is as follows, that when the Gemara, as codified by the Shulchan Aruch, says that if the Bezdin suspects Shema Yinosin Eineha Ba'acher, that maybe this woman has in mind her next husband, a particular individual, then we don't grant her a get, even if she would have halachically legitimate tainus that rise to the level of an obligation to give a get. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. So the Chazon Ish comes along, and basically I can't tell you where, and I can't tell you the words. I can only tell you the general concept. that Shema Yunasan Eineha Ba'acherim, meaning she doesn't have to have in mind that she wants to end the marriage so that she can marry Chaim Yankel. She just has to have in mind she wants to end the marriage to upgrade what she feels she's entitled to by marrying a Chaim Yankel that has yet to be discovered. But somebody will be richer, he'll be smarter, he'll be more of a comedian, he'll be more of a talker, whatever it is. Now, unfortunately, and I say this, unfortunately, the Chazal, the Roiv Poskim, it seems that the other Poskim do not accept this concept of the Chazon Ish, which would make it a very high level of proof on the wife when she just wants to jettison a marriage after a day, a year, 5 years, 30 years, or 40 years. So now we have the situation like this. We have Batei Din that we could almost make it a financial challenge that we'll give $10 to the favorite tzedakah of the person who can show us a bezdin that more than 3 times in the last year has told the woman, madam, it doesn't rise to chayav legarsha. You're breaking up a family. You're harming the children. You're hurting the husband and causing him to do averis by being a meredes, so that he'll be worse averis, and therefore get thee back home and fulfill your obligations. Go to therapy with your husband or whatever it is. If somebody could show me a bezdin that has done that 3 times in the last year, because after all, the Shekhinah used to cry on the destruction of a marriage. It could be now that with Ora and with the RCA and with everybody else, just one second, it could be just one second, please. It could be that the Shekhinah no longer cries because now it's a different time and a different age, because somebody posted on my chat, anybody, a woman, is not to be taken advantage of, and anybody, he corrected himself. He said only women, you understand? But then when his slip was showing, he corrected himself. Anybody, a woman, a man, who wants out of a marriage, it's horrible and wrong in today's times if you don't do it. And that's it, granted, finished business. And this is leading to tremendous, tremendous problems. And that leads to the subject that you wanted to discuss today. That what happens is, the Batei Din realize where their bread is buttered, because the Toyanim are the ones who bring the business to the Bezdin. How does the Bezdin get the business? How does Mrs. Moiredes know, who's been depriving her husband of 3 years of conjugation, and the poor Yid is climbing the walls, and he has to go to work on a train to Manhattan every day and see all the prutzes, and he doesn't have the paspa salary of his wife? You understand? So this woman, by the way, I just want to know, parenthetically, I'm giving a rant, but I'd like to know if she's not going to have to give it in the cheshbon afterwards. If the Rabbeinu Yonah says when a woman dresses improperly, she's going to the same place in hell as the man who she entices to look at her by her unsneistic address. I want to know if it's even possible that the Rabbeinu Yonah might hold that the woman is going to be responsible if she's a meredah shaloi kahalacha, and without the right heter, etc., and without going to third parties or whatever it is, if she's not going to be responsible for some of the averis that the poor zlob is going to do after being deprived of issues for months or years. But anyhow, the Bezdin realizes that the Tayanim who send to this Bezdin, he's not going to send if they're not going to cooperate. So they discuss they have all kinds of new methodologies. For instance, in Halacha, it doesn't say anywhere, you have to give us 3 different Batei Din that we approve of. The Halacha in Shulchan Aruch seems to be straightforward. It goes according to the nitva. If the woman's taking the husband to Bezdin, he has the right to say, I want to go to these 3 people, to this Talmidei Chachamim, whatever it is. What gives the first Bezdin the right to say, you have to give us 3 and we have to approve and this and that? All of this is minig America, minig Medina, to facilitate that we're going to succeed in breaking up the family. And I want to say, and I said on my chat, that I consider the Tayanim today and the Batei Din, Echad HaMarbe ve'Echad HaMamit, to one extent or another, these are family breakers. These are enablers, empowerers. They're Nogea B'dava because it's their parnasa. They say it's a lishma. If not, chas v'shalom, the woman will go to Arkuis. And that's the head of everything. That's why we can bend the rules, change the rules, etc. And we can make a divorce epidemic. What does this lead to? This leads to improper coercive gittin, which is called a get ma'osa, and therefore the children are mamzerim. So with that introduction, Rabbi Eidenson, the floor is now yours.
Well, the floor is mine. I can't say the floor like you'd say it. You're the real speaker of the floor, and you really put it down. That's exactly what's going on. There's Rabbi Yasha himself, when he heard about the New York State get law, that any woman could force a get, so he said he can't understand. He says, where's all the Torah in New York State? Thousands of them are sitting and learning Torah, and they have children and parents and everything, and not one person was murdered. And he says, who was murdered? There was one fellow in Eretz Israel who was in Monty, was a Bush president, and there was another person in Yitzchak. But the Hamish, the Torah the Torah, every place, they're not interested. And I've been shocked. I've been seeing what's going on. I talked to people that I thought were really Mishalonu and the tzaddikim and everything. And when it comes to these kind of things, they're not interested in talking about it. Other things they'll talk about, but not these things. It's a frightening world.
Rabbi Eidenson, I'm going to say something that maybe people would not expect to hear from me. But we are both here by Klugensach bemoaning the terrible tragedy that is with the exponentially increasing divorce rate. She'ain bias, ein mishpacha, she'ain boy mess, a mace and a mess up, and the kids. You don't come into classes today in schools in the very youngest grades without 2 or 3 children already being the products of divorced homes. Now, the opposite side of the argument is when they see the bickering, the quarreling, the disrespect between husband and wife, that is also tremendously deleterious to the children, and therefore there's a rationale that it's much better for the children to be in a more or less stable atmosphere with a mother who is now looking on the prowl for her second, dare I say, victim, because if he doesn't toe the line, he'll have signed his prenuptial, and you understand. And if he doesn't toe the line correctly, it'll be the next one. I'm being a little sarcastic, but I think with the divorce statistics and the amount of the dissatisfaction, primarily from the feminine gender, I think I'm entitled to a little bit of sarcasm. But here's the other part that people don't expect. I think that we can't just bemoan the situation. And unfortunately, we have a feckless, F-E-C-K-L-E-S-S, a tepid, a timid, a nose and eyes in the ground, ostrich-like rabbinate in so many different areas that befall and besiege and beleaguer Klal Yisrael on a daily basis. The latest example is what's going on in Lakewood, where I had the chutzpah to protest against the Schmutz Library with a month's pride, or that they're giving out in the stadium, which Aaron Cutler and the Askanim made an agreement to have a stadium in Lakewood. They was missing a stadium, by the way, and now when the stadium gets a 40-year contract for a ridiculously low $150,000 or $175,000, with the same stadium, if they'll rent it out for a night for a rock concert, will probably get over $100,000, maybe as much as $200,000. So that's what they're paying rent for a year. They're making $9 million. Why did Aaron Cutler and the other Askanim do this? Because they wanted to get something called Cedar Ridge, so they should be able to build big developments and Leka Bendel. So in other words, so now when Rabbanim were upset that the stadium was built and they came complaining to the Rosh Yeshivas, you know what the Eitzah was? The Eitzah was they sent out a letter. Whomsoever their child will go to a baseball game or another event at Blue Cross Stadium, we will throw out not only the offending child, we will throw out all the children from the yeshivas or Beis Yaakovs in Lakewood. This, in other words, first you create the Frankenstein. First you put the restaurant with the tarfus in the middle of Lakewood, and then you say, if they're nichshol, we're going to, it's called double jeopardy. We're going to punish you twice as much. We'll throw you and all your kids out, guilt by association. No, it's beautiful. So that's why I say the rabbis are tepid. When a Rabbi Verona went and asked the Rosh Yeshivas, Rabbi Yitzchak Saratsky says, we should protest. Rabbi Blach who formerly a Muncie, told me on the phone, listen, I'd like to, except I'm sick, but it's a gewaldige thing you're doing. I'm honored you asked me. Rav Simcha Bunim Cohen, the Anikel of Avigdor Miller through marriage, said, yeah, I'll come down, but the last minute he chickened out for whatever the reason is. He's a fine fellow, but he chickened out. Maybe it wasn't sneerstic enough for him, whatever it was. But when Verona went to the Rosh Yeshivas, they said, don't participate in this. And therefore, they were able to put on the liberal Lakewood blogs, this is a one-man thing, Yehuda Levin, the Michiganer, and that's it, which I'm proud to take all the credit. I'm not nishtaimim. But the point is, we have a tepid rabbinate in so many areas. So what are we going to do, Rabbi Eidenson? How we can't expect that the Rabbanim are going to fix things up. So I want to propose something which I started to say before, which is shocking. I believed, and I've said it several times, but I believe it deserves to be outlined and reaffirmed and re-emphasized again and again. The time has come that just like a person needs a driving license, he has to pass a road test. He has to have a certain amount of a 3-hour course or a 5-hour course. There are different things you have to do. We don't just give a license. I think that it should be de rigueur that young people should have comprehensive courses by Torah authorities, mumchim in intergender relations, of shalom bayis, of how a man is different than a woman, attitudinally, and a woman is different than a man, and that people should go through Pashat, a course, before somebody's Masad Kedushin. Now, I have to say myself, I look back at my own situation and I realize I had a very strong chauvinistic attitude. The husband is the king, the husband is the king, and all of these ideas. And there might have been a time when a husband was a king. And nobody is going to explain to a brash, young 25-year-old, 26, 27-year-old, Herzachain, mein Kind ist nicht so, and you have to know and you have to deal accordingly, and you have to know how to compromise, and you have to know how to talk more, and you have to consult more. What does it say? Isha, if a woman is tiny, then gachen v'lachashlo, bend down and listen to her to hear what she has to say, etc. And I look back now and I realize that it would have been much, much better for me and much, much better for thousands of mishpachas that are limping along to one extent or another if there would have been early on guidance and hashbaya. And I think that is a part of the solution. Another part of the solution, I believe, although I wouldn't hold my breath because I has to be massacring myself, is really that the women in the later high school years and in the seminary years have to hear addresses not from men, but from prominent, charismatic Rebbetzins, Madriches, to explain to them what the achrayus of a woman is in the marriage in terms of a certain amount of his batlos. It can't be ein shtei malachim mishtamshim bekesa echad. From the sun and the moon, leich mir the tasmeich. And this is the amkus of the bracha shasani kurt Sinai. The amkus is Ritzainai was that she has to use her bini yisera to deal with the rough edges of the man. That doesn't mean she has to suffer. And it could be, I would love to see a prenuptial agreement. You know what the prenuptial agreement would be? Not if she wants a divorce, he'll get constant $500 a day. if every day he doesn't go to Bezdin, whereas Dirugoy is going to get it. But there should be that the woman has the right to demand, and it should really be specified in advance who it is, which mashpia, which psychologist, which Frum Torah Shalom Bayis person or persons they're going to go to. That should be a prenuptial agreement, and the Rosh Hashiva should chasman on to that. That if a woman has kindness on the husband and he wants to get recalcitrant, he's not going for help, then they go to the Rosh Hashiva, and in such a case, if he continues to insist he's not going to go for help, then succumb them that society should come down on him. Anyhow, Rabbi Eidenson, the floor is once again yours.
Oh, that's very kind of you. I want to tell you that I completely disagree with everything that you said.
Oh, Baruch Hashem, that's why you're here.
Okay. Let me tell you about me. When I got married, so I spoke every Shabbos to the kids for an hour or two, and it was the one drush was one idea, that the main thing is the mother. And my wife put up with it, you know. Anyway, so my children now, they're completely loving in the family. There's no drop problems in the family, and the children themselves are big time in the chachamim, and they're the chachamim in Eretz Israel and in America also, very big kodesh. And my children are hired in Eretz Israel with money that doesn't come so easily. My daughters are given big money to speak what it was like to grow up with the Eidenson family. So I learned one thing. I spoke always for other people, not for myself. I spoke about my wife and the goddess of women, and my daughters picked it up very strong. And my daughters are in schools, and they start talking, well, you know, women also have rights, this and that, you know, like it's a big finish. So my daughters say to them, we learned that when we were little kids. And little kids was a long time ago. So people grew up with the understanding that the woman is very harsh, and there's two very words like that. The women were the ones that got the Yid not the men. The men have a very bad record in Kedusha, very bad. Mitzrayim, when Avram Avinu went to Mitzrayim with Sarah, so she was very beautiful, and the Goy picked her up, and they decided they're giving her over to the king, to Paro. So she went to Paro, and Avram Avinu was smart enough to not to say that it was his wife, because they would have killed him right away. So he kept his mouth shut, and they announced that he's the brother-in-law of the king of Paro, and it was mamish on top. People give her the money and COVID, unbelievable. What about Zara? She was in the house with the Paro, and he was coming after her. So she called out to a malach. She was a novi. She called out to a malach, and she said, make sure that he behaves. He came to her, and the malach gave him such a smash. No woman could have hit him like that. And he didn't know what's going on. But she was very beautiful. He decided that, it's his wife, whatever. So he came again, and this time he got such a smack. He said, this is certainly from a malach, from Hashem, and Hashem is telling me that this woman is a married woman, and I have no right to take her. He called her Avram Avinu, and he says, what did you do to me? I almost got killed by a malach because of you. Why didn't you tell me the truth, that it's your wife? He said, I'll tell you the truth. I knew if I told you that she was my wife, you would kill me. That's the answer.
Reb David, I just because the time is clicking, it's going by, I just want to refocus. You said you disagreed with me when I said that there should be premarital counseling, that men and women should appreciate their respective roles and the respective roles and the hanhagas that they should have attitudinally towards their spouses. Now, I'm not hearing specifically to hone in on what is wrong with this And what is wrong also with an additional dollop, DOLLOP, an additional portia for women who are now experiencing in every area of life, in Haredi life, the trickle-down effect of the overwhelming siren calls of feminism. They don't, it's not now 30 or 40 years ago when you were raising children, they don't need to hear more how they're not second-class citizens. Every young girl and woman has this bombarding her from the secular and the Orthodox culture. It's out there and it manifests itself specifically in areas of the tremendous untzniistigkeit in dress, even by a tremendous amount of Orthodox and Haredi women. So what's wrong with the second suggestion I gave, that the girls, specifically young women, as they approach the marriage years, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, that they should hear that it should be defined to them, the feminism, what it is, the deleterious aspects of it, how it creeps into the conscious and subconscious, and how it could affect their attitudes and relationships towards their husbands, and to try to create somewhat of a counterbalance. What's wrong specifically with these two eitzes?
Okay, you missed the whole point. I taught my children I am man and telling them that they're the boss. Let me just tell you a first thing. I was in Eretz Yisrael. We're thinking we're going to move to Eretz Yisrael, me and my wife. So we have 7 children in Eretz Yisrael and 3 children in America. Okay. So I got messed up with the Jewish agency. I had big finance on them for certain reasons. Anyway, so finally I mentioned it to my children my problems, and nobody had an answer to me. So I turned to Hashem and I said to him, I want an answer. What am I supposed to do with the Jewish agency? So Hashem didn't talk to me. I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu. So anyway, so I picked up a Tanakh with no parish. I flipped it open, put one of my fingers. I didn't do it if Aaron did, of a girl like her. I didn't do those things. I'm not so intelligent to do those things. I flipped it open, and it came to the story of Manoach and Shimshon, a story like that. To make it a very long story short, very, very short, the story was that Manoach was an idiot and his wife was a tzedekis. That was the story. Okay, so I said, that's what Hashem told me. I'm telling him about the Jewish agency. If he tells me, you let your wife take care of it. That's it. That's what Hashem told me. I was on the plane with my wife, and I lost my tefillin. I couldn't find it. My wife found the tefillin. And but when it came time to apply for the Jewish agency, so it didn't go with me. I was mad at the Jewish agency. I didn't want to write to them. So one day I get a letter from the Jewish agency. We have accepted all your paper. I said, what? They wrote to me. I said, I never wrote to you. I didn't know you wrote to me. So I realized my wife had sent it in. So I see what David is telling me. If you're going to behave, everything is going to be nice. And Baruch Hashem, I have a wonderful marriage. I have wonderful children. Not a massive problems from any of the children. But that's because I've gone to Mavata myself, to my children, and to my wife. I did the work. And I'm a nothing. I have nothing. My children are more harsher than me in many ways, especially I'm an old man now. I'm almost 80 years old. But for sure, I have to respect my children. And the children respect that. The children are crazy about me, and they're always asking me for brachos, this and that. It's a different world.
Rev Eidenson, I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate the chizik of the personal autobiographical hatzlachas that you have, and I'm sure it's obvious that your mahalach was and is a gewaldige mahalach, whether or not it's for everybody, and to the extent and proportionality of which this mahalach is the mahalach. I think that there are, just like there are many gavnos, there are many colors in the spectrum of Klal Yisrael, and there are many approaches. I still think that elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, and that not everybody is able to see part of being respectfully, part of being an advisor and giving advice is it can't just be I did it this way and this way is the way for everybody. We're talking here not just about tzaddikim and big bali musa, etc., who can always be machnia and they don't need hadracha in that hachna, and they could get these messages from Hashem as you picked up with your sensitive antenna, being a Talmud Chacham and a person who was Oisik v'tzarchit tzibah. The general community, we have to deal with the masses, and the masses need hadracha, and they need defined gedorim, they need boundaries and gates and fences, etc. And they need a support system, and they need warning systems to go off, because if not, left to their own devices, there'll be more divorce. And I think that what I'm suggesting, I can't back down. I think that I'm suggesting very, very rational things that, and Chachma B'Goyim Taimin, the Gentiles already for years realized there's a staggering problem with divorce and with infidelity and with, disposable marriages. And Chachma B'Goyim, amongst the very religious, they do have these courses. They insist on them in certain tziburs of the goyim, that the galachim say you got to go to this amount of courses and this and that, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's no different than anything else. A person wants to become an accountant. The person wants to be considered licensed to be a lifeguard or CPR. What's a bigger lifeguard than the life of marriage? This requires.
I'll tell you a fair story.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a Zayden, okay? So in the family here, my daughter lives next door to me, and her husband is very chashuv. He runs Slonim Shul, and one of his children got married. So I was a Zayden, so I was given 2 brachas. And it was in New York City, so they made it outside the chasana, and on the sidewalk in New York City. So I got the first bracha, and I made the bracha. But then the person that was running things, he calls out, "Now give a bracha." So I'm not in the business of brachas, so I didn't know what to do. I was stunned. I didn't know what to do. Maybe he's trying to burn that video of me. And I came up with the idea. I said to him, I give you a bracha that you should be jealous of your children. So and then I ran away. So the Rav from Slaughter, he stopped me. He said, what kind of bracha did you give? I said, I gave a bracha that he should be jealous of his children. So the Rav says, give me that bracha. So I said, well, the Gemara says, because there was kind of no one is ever jealous of his children. So I said, if a person is jealous of his children, he has to have fantastic children. The Rose says, I want that bracha too.
Rabbi Eidenson, beautiful. I've got to take leave of you now, because this was an unexpected pleasure that we had to have you. But I have a lot of content I still have to get to. We have less than half an hour to go. So I want to thank you very much, and we'll be in touch again.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you for inviting me.
All the best. Let's continue with a little world news roundup. Just a few items to tell you what's going on in the Michigan world out there. High school girls are making a federal complaint regarding that they're allowing transgendered to compete in sports against the women. And of course, it's unfair, because the men are stronger than the women, so it's unfair competition. But this is the craziness in the secular world. In Quebec, they've been threatening this for a long time, and they now came across and they banned all religious apparel by anybody who is attired in religious apparel, who's working for the Quebec Montreal government, which would affect hijabs. I think it could affect wearing a tselem, and also would affect wearing yarmulkes, and who knows, I don't know about sheitlach, whatever. In France, they're testing compulsory youth civil service to weaken parental authority over the kids. In other words, Papa government knows better how to raise your kids, and we're going to give them regimentation responsibility by mandating youth civil service, where you lose control over your kids and who they associate with, what they do, what they see, and what they hear. And believe me, if this works out in Europe, this is becoming it's an international threat, meaning that the liberal politicians in the United States have voiced these ideas in the past. Of course, they cloak it in all kinds of reasons, chashuv reasons, that we don't want to have a draft, so we'll make something like a Peace Corps, a youth corps that they used to have, where voluntarily young people, idealistic, would go around the world to serve in African villages and in the Amazon to help the poor and to do farming. But now they'll ratchet it up, and this could be coming to us as well. So it's something we should be afraid of. Now, in Spokane, Washington, this past Saturday, they had a protest called 500 Mamas Strong, that a woman was married 13 years with 4 children. She said, if I see that the drag queen story hour is going to come to the children's library in Spokane, I am going to protest. And when it happened, she went out there and on Facebook and she started to put together, and Fashtesach, the Mushchosim, the pro-drag queens, came out with their 500 pro-drag queens, and their organization, they came out with 100 or 200 people shouting everything else. Sorry, Lakewood, this is what it's about. And if you think you're going to stick your head ostrich-like in the sand and it's going to go away, I want to see when they'll have a drag queen story hour in Lakewood. And then maybe if Aaron Cutler's granddaughter goes there, maybe then they'll say something. And then it might be too late. They now have it in the stadium. They're having stuff for a month in the library. Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day is one day a year. But for the Mishkevei Zacha and the trans, you got to have a whole month of pride. And you have to have on the trains, on the outside of the trains, big mazel tovs, happy Pride Day, a happy Pride Month, and then of course on the Metro cards that you buy in the machines, there's Happy Pride Month. Everywhere they're indoctrinating and pushing it and stooping it, etc., etc. And we want to know how soon they're going to be free to make the parade down the center streets of Lakewood. They do it in Yerushalayim, but Yehuda Levin's doing a tremendous avla that he's making a protest, although they don't have the guts to come out so far and answer it in writing. But, Balpeh, they said nobody should go. Okay, you know what? I love them. They're gewaldic, but they have as much shaykhs to how to deal with morality. You understand? They have as much shaykhs as I have with uktzin or with shver shaylis or not so shver shaylis in kashrus or etc., etc. It's not their Mitzayah. I have 40 years of Messiah, and what they're doing, and not only them, but all over the globe, what Rabbanim are doing or not doing is really sad and pathetic. If you didn't exercise that muscle and learn those hashkafas and be oisik in those things, I'm sorry, you lose the shaykhis. In ta'azveini yoim, yomayim azveka. If you stay away from a certain of Torah for a day, you lose 2 days. And one might suggest if you stay away from certain mitzvahs of Torah for a day, you lose 2 days. If you stay away from it for 30 or 40 years of your adult life, are you really qualified to say? I have a very good friend, Haroitze Be'ilum Shmei, who's a big tzaddik and a asken and a bal chesed, and he's very bothered by a lot of the missionizing type of stuff that's going on. And in particular, something that was motivating him was that when the great Kabbalist Rabbi Kaduri died, they found some sort of a note or something, and the missionaries tried to make whole cloth out of this thing, and to say that he was being murdered, that Yeshu, Yamak Shemai V'Zichra, Yeshu is the Mashiach. And they wrote books about this, and they made movie clips about it, and all kinds of things. So this gentleman wrote, he's a polished writer, and very well thought out. And he's just opened the blog, and I want to give you his blog. He's already posted something, and eventually he's going to post on this and other things. but I want to bring to the attention of the tzibur, the name of the blog is truthoftorah.com. Truthoftorah.com. I highly recommend it. He's a moyerdika writer, very incisive and very well thought out. Now, they recently have a law that passed in the New York State government that they are going to upgrade the human rights commissions, the law of the state that controls or that influences how the local municipalities' human rights commissions in cities, towns, villages, whatever, across the state will operate. They will have to explicitly recognize in all its glory LGBTQ as on par with normalcy, like trans is normal. And also they will have to place those types of people onto their human rights commissions. So Simcha Felder voted for this garbage. And Frankenstein, the little Zidicheva monster that is growing from day to day, he voted for this garbage. So when some Frum Yid is going to do something in his business, and he'll be the equivalent of the Colorado baker who won't want to bake for a transgender wedding or whatever the schmutz or photography, etc., he'll be hauled before a human rights commission in his municipality, whether it's Kiryas Joel or the Monsey or Spring Valley or New York. He'll be penalized and busted big time, and he'll be able to give an additional thanks to Frankenstein, and no Simcha Felder for the betrayal of basic decency and consideration of Torah values. Then we have the winner heikened, the dream, the nightmare that doesn't want to just go away. Now, Dov does many nice things and good things, etc., but he's a big boy, and I criticize people let the chips fall where they may. Mamish almost 40 years ago, when he first became assemblyman, and he was walking down the streets with the oisva of Andrew Stein, the oisva of Ultra Lib, who was also one of the people who caused so many tsaris and chil Hashems for the Yidden with the nursing homes. Okay, Andrew Stein, and he was then running for mayor or considering it, and Heiken decided to take the walk down 13th Avenue and give him his Heiken stempel of Hechsha. I said then, high kind or kind of low? And it's now the better part of 40 years later, and you tell me if that question, high kind or kind of low, doesn't apply. Heiken wants to remain a player. He probably felt the signal when his son Yoni lost that he was going to lose a re-election in ignominious defeat after being almost 4 decades in office. And so he took the high kind of road, meaning he voluntarily decided to resign, to retire rather. And he even gave the Hefsha the next day or whatever it was, within the next few days, to Eichenstein, because he knew that that's who Greenfield, his enemy and everything else, that's who the Oilam was going to put in. So he really had to grin and bear it, despite the fact that I'm sure he was plotting. And I sympathize with him for this. I understand. He wants to remain relevant. He's used to having the microphones. He made organizations. He's running around. He's running to Germany. He's speaking about anti-Semitism. Nunu. Now listen to how sick. It's high kind of sick. It's very, very sick. Listen to this. There's a certain gay parade somewhere, I forget where, in Washington, in Germany, where they don't want to allow Israeli flags. So this Heikened is tummeling and making videos and statements of chutzpah that the gay parade, wherever it is, the Mishkav Zacha, the Mushkis parade, does not want to allow gay Israeli flags. You understand? So we should zufrieden sell Heikened. If they make flags, Israeli flags in the Mishkav Zacha parade, then I'll be happy. Instead of Heikened being a mensch and standing up and saying it's disgraceful that Jewish queer youth and other homosexual things groups march at the Israel Day parade under their banners with their schmutz and their icons, that Heiken says nothing about. But this Heiken says plenty about. This is what's tutzel. This is what's bothering him in this Welt. Is this kind of high or is this very, very low? It's low not only in the Metzius, it's lowbrow intellectually. Like, where is the seichel? Where is the seichel? Shame on Mr. Heiken. This is what he has to put on his Facebook and everything. I want to know if his friends in Ateret Kohanim, the Zionists, the ones who are doing all this stuff to keep us rugis, I wonder if they approve of Mr. Heiken's push to have Israeli flags, the golem, in the homosexual parade. I wish they would weigh in and tell us. It's downright depraved. What is he trying to do? Heiken, make the parade more palatable. They're more Jew-friendly. That's what we need. Wonderful. By the way, the New York City, for the first time in their budget, has now allocated $250,000 for the city government with city taxpayer dollars to pay for abortion. In the federal government, there's something called the Hyde Amendment, which Biden supported for the last 40 years or 35 years or whatever it is since Hyde made it, that U.S. government money should not be used to pay for abortions on the federal level. And now Biden realizes where his bread is butter. He's trying to run in the pro-Ritzicha party, so he has to contend. All of a sudden, he had a midnight conversion therapy, and he's now, we must overturn the Hyde Amendment. But meanwhile, in New York City, under de Blasio and the homosexual activist speaker, Corey Johnson, they just allocated $250,000 of taxpayer money to fund the Ritzicha Su'abarim. Then we have Ezraini Imagenaini He. Ezra Freelander, scion of Liska, is giving nachas to the Zaydis, and Yabon L'chaim Toivim. I'm sure his father, the Liska Ruv, is very happy, and I'm sure his uncle, formerly the chaplain of Maimonides, I'm sure he's quelling from Ezra's latest tweet. Ezra tweets out a kiss up to Councilman Mark Levin or Mark Levine. He's always doing good things, and it's such a great thing. He's always doing good things. Levin is in charge. Mark Levin, who represents part of Wiensburg, is such a schmutzyak and such garbage. But Ezra is gewaldig. Ezra halt as mit afchoinev zayin lemata me'asura tvocha. We got to bend down to the very ground and lick having misavik ba'afer raglayhem from all the oisofen. It's gewaldig and it's wonderful and it's a great source of nachas. Ezra, you get with pride. You should wear the Chainif of the Week award. Yes, you had absolutely, you've reasserted yourself as the number one Chainif around. This rivals your wishing happy, holy Ramadan day to the Muslims, and this rivals when you were coming back from the Cuomo speech and you were saying, look how wonderful it is that we have Nadler, the Oisva, quoting Chazal, Ne'amosei Karina Seshma Ba'aris. Ezra, this is right up there. You got that trifecta. You're doing a great job. Did I mention Liska enough? Okay. By the way, in that human rights thing that we talked about before, that legislation with the human rights, they changed all kinds of lashonis. So they changed the word religion, that it has to be taken into account, to a more generalized, watered-down nusach called creed. And therefore, it's defanging. It's taking away the oomph, the teeth out of religion, making it much more general. I have a creed that my creed is that every Thursday night we should get up and go at midnight and howl to the moon. That's my creed. I call myself a Wolverine. And that's the equivalent of Lahavdil Catholicism, Islam, Lahavdil Judaism, you understand? So that's another thing. Okay? And what they did is they elevate the level of LGBTQ to be mamish on the state level, attitudinally, to be mamish just totally like normal, so that they could make us tsaris. So you should know, when when you get hauled before the Vad in the future, you can give a dank to No Simcha and Felder and Frankenstein Eichenstein. Now, there's now a bill that passed that people who work with senior citizens throughout the state in any capacity, like OL or Mishkan or Federation, or any job that has to do with treating seniors, probably aides, if you're an aide to a person, that you're going to have to go through certain brainwashing courses of LGBTQ propaganda to understand how old homosexuals are different and the history of LGBTQ or why they feel this way. Now you have to understand that the LGBTQ are only a small, tiny percent of the population, but what they're doing is they're forcing everybody who wants to keep their job, whether it's government or I think it could even be private agencies who are contracted to work with seniors, they all have to go through this propaganda now. This is massive propagandizing. Now, why in the world does Simcha Eichenstein vote against this bill in committee, and then when it comes out in pub on the main floor, he votes for it? You know why? So he can have it two ways. He can say like this, listen to what this fopper, this Ziditcheva faker is going to try to say. Because I had this conversation with him before he was elected. He's going to say, listen, I realized it in the committee, but 183 bills came in one day. So I didn't know, so I voted for it. Yataka, I didn't know. So you didn't know, and you stepped on the gas when you should have stepped on the brake, and you ran over a kid, but you didn't know. You did it not on purpose. We're supposed to swallow this garbage. The only thing is, ein Einchin el inken mashirin. I told Simcha Eichenstein clearly in the night conversation. He was kind enough to call me at midnight and spend half an hour or 40 minutes with me on the phone. It wasn't pleasant for him. I told him, if the bills come in fast and furious and you don't have enough of a staff that does clearly the research on the bills, when you read the summaries of the bill and the names of the bills, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to get the general idea. There are certain things that stick out. In this bill, LGBTQ is written all over the place, okay? So there's no heter, and I told him, either you vote no, or you abstain. You do not vote yes unless you're sure it's 100% kosher. Well, I can't commit to that, and especially the end of the session, he was already laying the groundwork to capitulate and to be Mechal Hashem Shemayim. And by the way, he's our Shliach Tzibor. That's what the Satmar Rebbe said. The Knesset is the Shliach Tzibor in Israel of the Jews who voted for them. And the Kashvarov said it doesn't take a rocket scientist, that when we have a religious or even a friar representative who's elected with our votes in the United States, then he's our shliach. We have a responsibility for the garbage that he does. So I'm telling you now, what Felder and Eichenstein are doing by turning the other cheek for their own political reasons, or not to look extremists to their fellow people, or because they don't do due diligence research. But here it's very hypocritical and lying of Simcha Eichenstein Frankenstein to try to say he didn't know what's in this propaganda bill because he voted against it in committee, okay? What they're doing is Hashem is going to react just like in Chicago when they kiss up to Gaelish Kalish. Somebody gave him that name, Gaelish. I love it. Yechiel Mark Gaelish, because he's sort of Gaelish, you know? And when he's pro Mishkav Zocha and he doesn't protest against abortion, so there will be more Mishkav Zocha in Chicago affecting Yiddish Kinder, and there will be more abortions. That's the way it works. I don't know how, I don't know when, but we understand Hashem works me to connect me. If you don't care, I don't care. If you Rev Landau Tosha Dayan, Rev Shraga Haga, Vidmitzer Rebbe of this, Baba Rebbe 48, 49, 72 hike, Satmar Rebbe, Climber Street, the Rod Waterpark Street, Monroe Street. If you people don't care and you don't control the Beckish wearing first Hasidic in the assembly, who's a little schnook, you should excuse me, he's a young gotch, and he can easily be controlled, you don't do it, then because of you rabbis and everyone listening to this program who's not protesting, because of that, you will see in our community increasingly garbage stuff from the LBTQRST that affects us. And the same applies with the abortions and with other schmutz that they turn the other cheek to. Moving right along in our last 5 minutes. There's another bill that they voted for. Eichenstein voted yes for. It's called the Hate Crimes Analysis, to give further credence, okay, to the LBTQ. That's the purpose of this thing, is that they should have to hold demographics in all the state agencies and the government. It's going to cost who knows what of taxpayer dollars. We should be able to, again, brainwash and focus on that new category of LBTQ. Why I could see that to vote for this? Why? He's the Das Torah. Every step is a slice of salami. He's signaling to the Goyish media and to all the Goyish politicians. The Jew boys, the Heimis with the long coats and the long sidelocks, they're all nice guys and they're all for sale. As Rodney Bichette, the assemblywoman from the edge of Flatbush, says, you people were never interested in morality. You're interested about your piece of the pie. Simcha Eichenstein proves it again and again. He knows how to speak out for religious freedom by the vaccines. That's mechayev him to speak out and everything else. And by the way, he's a hypocrite, because what's the reason that he said, I'm for vaccines, I vaccinate, but I'm afraid when you're taking away religious exemptions, it's going to open the Pandora's box for other things. So it's anti-religion. And all the votes that you made, Simcha Eichenstein, in the last year or less than a year, in the 6 months that you've got in, maybe 10 Mishkav Zohar and abortion bills, maybe more, all those things, that wasn't taking away our religious freedom, whether you call it exemption or not. You phony hypocrite, shame on you, and shame on the people who don't tell him. If he's not feeling the heat, I don't care if I'm a kol kaira b'midbar. I am happy to be neutral neged kulam. I am moicha. I told Eichenstein, and it was written in the Jewish press, exactly how he should deal with voting at the end of the sessions. He's doing exactly what he says. Helter skelter, he's going along with the leadership and voting for schmutz. And he'll do his garbage. You people out there will ignore him and do nothing. It's we listen to Levin, he's ranting, it's an entertainment. Yeah, but to say something to Eichenstein, to pick up a phone to Felder, unfortunately, I'm using my phone to WhatsApp this program, so I can't access Felder's number. But Felder should be called. Listen, he voted for the worst bill in the history of his career. He voted for a state ERA bill. The state ERA bill is going to give total equality, that homosexuality, transgender, and gender identity. That means I identify my body, that's going to have the same shavias as the most basic human right. Okay, that's going to be the takeoff, and they usually shyness that anything that the federal government allows, even if the federal government is against what we're doing, but to the nth extent, as high as we can go to push this mushkas agenda and equality, we're doing. And they said, yeah, but this won't affect religious schools. They can still segregate. So I felt going to say, look, they gave me such a concession that we can still segregate and have separate boys' schools or girls' schools. I'm bowing down in front of the camera screen now. Oh, thank you so much, Governor Cuomo. Thank you so much, Carl Hastings. Thank you so much, all of them, for allowing us. And then I have to vote for it. It doesn't say in that constitutional amendment, which becomes the supreme law of New York State, that will knock out all kinds of other laws and give judges super leeway to do a lot more damage than they're already doing. It doesn't say there that you don't have to take into your yeshivas a boy dressed as a girl, or a girl dressed as a boy, or all this kind of transgender and gender identity, etc., etc. Thank you, Simcha Felder, for doing more, because you sent a signal. If the Republicans saw that even the right-wing righteous rabbi, he does have smicha from Tervadas, Felder can vote for this. This reminds us of a newspaper article. We have a long memory in the Daily News. Maybe it was Bob Carroll, I don't know who it was, who was covering politics, and he said there was a question whether Christina Quinn would be the first open lesbian to lead as Speaker of the City Council, the second most powerful job in the city. And when Simcha Felder walked out not to vote against her, wink, 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 blink. This is what they want in the Goyish Daily News. Everybody understood it's kosher to vote for her. Adank Simcha Felder, who later brought the speaker to Beis Yaakov as a role model. Later on, he apologized to me. But Simcha, you're nishtarish b'chet, you're voting for garbage after garbage, and I hope people let you know. And frankly, I'd rather have a black person like Kevin Parker representing the Orthodox district and have Simcha Felder capitulating like this. It's disgraceful and shameful. Eichenstein, Felder, and Rosenthal voted for all benefits retroactively for homosexual veterans who were discharged from the army when homosexuality was considered prohibited to be in the army. Now, what that means is if there were 6 reasons to shut somebody out of dishonorable discharge, which means you won't get benefits, and the prosecutor in the army chose to identify him as a sodomist, and that's why. And really, there were other things also. But now that they made this regulation, which Chaim Deutsch and his committee allowed to go through, and he conveniently wasn't attending the hearings, and then they voted on it, you understand that Chaim Deutsch had to take this stupid Veterans Committee. So he's officially the one who presided over this law. Now they're making it a state law, and all the 3 Stooge Haimis, betrayers of Yiddishkeit, all voted for it. Okay? Rosenthal, Felder, and Eichenstein. Okay? And even the military organizations, veterans organizations who are not anti-Mishkav Zacha, they criticized this. Okay? I told you now every state agency is going to have to collect all kinds of information, data for LBT, gender, identity, etc. Felder voted for it. Eichenstein, 1 vote decent, 1 out of 5, 20%, 4 Mishkav Zacha votes. Felder voted for this, Eichenstein voted against it. Felder voted for youth, LBT task force to push the passion defense and also the passion defense, which we'll have to talk about next week. They also voted, Felder and Eichenstein, weeks ago for a gay adoption bill. That means if Mishkevei Zacha travel from America to Europe and that one of them is not recognized as the parent of the child, that he should have more rights to his children as a Mishkevei Zacha couple. This was the business of Felder and Eichenstein, both of them, to vote for it. Okay, Rabbi side, we're running out of time. I want to thank you. This is Yehuda Levin wishing you all the best. Call to try to call up Felder and Eichenstein and tell them how you want to disassociate yourself from their schmutz. Until we meet again, a guten Tamid.